Japanese grammar series.
Conjugating verbs.
Domo everyone, o genki desu ka? Ina desu.
Nori desu. For today's video, we're going to be talking about how to conjugate group 1 verbs. Hopefully by the end of this video, conjugating verbs will be a lot easier to understand and you too can become a master verb conjugator.
Let's
hajimemashou. So, Japanese verb conjugation. Now, I know a lot of people struggle with this.
Yes, and I was one of those people. I remember memorizing the song, studying and looking at the graphs and tables with all the different forms of the conjugations, and it was pretty tough.
Oh yeah? To quickly explain what verb conjugation is, it's when a verb changes from its original infinitive form depending on the subject. And today we're mainly looking at group 1 verbs, otherwise known as GODAN verbs, and how to conjugate them.
Great! What are group 1 verbs and GODAN verbs?
GODAN verbs refers to the majority of verbs that end in the sound u. So u, ku, gu, su, tsu, mu, bu, nu, and du.
Okay.
But not all verbs ending in lu are GODAN verbs. Verbs with the sound i or e before the lu fall under the ichidan or group 2 verbs, and they aren't conjugated in the same way. So for example, you have ne, lu, or mi, du.
I see.
Now the main point about these verb conjugations are the endings. So as we discussed earlier, the verbs ending in the u sound. And when you conjugate these verbs, these are the parts that will be changing, and they change depending on the hiragana chart. So here we have the first 5 letters of the hiragana. A, I, U, E, O. This is essentially the foundation of hiragana, because the other letters, they're just basically the same vowel sounds with a different consonant in front of it. Like ka, ki, ku, ke, ko, or sa, shi, su, se, so.
Yeah, that's true. Except for I guess.
Yeah, you're right. For each conjugation form, we'll briefly discuss when it's used and then how the verb changes. Okay, so we'll be using the verb iku, iku, and this means to go. As you can see, the dictionary form of the verb ends in ku, and by changing the vowel sound at the end, you get ka, ki, ke, ko. And by adding the necessary endings, we can make different verb conjugations.
That sounds easy so far, but I bet it's more complicated than it sounds.
Well, we'll see. So the dictionary form of to go is iku. And this remains the same when the verb comes before a noun to become an attributive verb.
Okay, so an example of an attributive verb would be iku hito. Iku hito, which means a person who goes.
Yeah. To add a bit more context, you could say jimu ni iku hito. Jimu ni iku hito. Person who goes to the gym.
Gotcha.
Now say you wanted to convert this verb to go into the polite present future form, otherwise known as the masu form.
So you'd use these when you're talking to someone older than you or in a formal situation?
Right, exactly. Changing the ending from ku to ki and then adding the masu, it becomes ikimasu. Ikimasu.
I see. Then for the polite negative, would we add masen instead of masu? So it would become ikimasen.
Exactly. And if you wanted to convert it to the past tense, you would change it ever so slightly again. So for the past positive, it's the same ending, but this time you'll be adding mashita. Mashita. So it becomes ikimashita. And for the past negative, you still add the masen, but with an additional deshita. So it becomes masen deshita. Ikimasen deshita. Ikimasen deshita.
Then for ikimashita, it means I did go. And ikimasen deshita means I didn't go?
Exactly. So if you want to change this to the short negative form, which you might use in casual situations, you change the ku to a ka and just simply add nai.
Then it would become ikanai, which means to not go?
Exactly.
Then can this also be added before a noun? For example, ikanai hito. Ikanai hito, which might mean a person who does not go?
Exactly. So using the same example that we used before, it might be jimu ni ikanai hito. Jimu ni ikanai hito. Person who doesn't go to the gym.
I got it. Alright, I mean, it makes sense so far, and I kind of see the pattern over here. For verbs ending in the u sound, changing the vowel at the end within the same row of the hiragana chart, i.e. changing the consonant, you can add certain endings to change the conjugation.
Very good. Now let's continue to have a look at the other conjugations that can be made using the same pattern. What if you change the ku to a ke? There are actually 3 conjugations that can be made from ike. So let's start off with the imperative form. So when you're commanding someone to do something, you change the ku to the ke, but then you don't need to add anything else. If anything, just the exclamation mark. So it becomes ike, go.
Very demanding.
Next, we'll be looking at the hypothetical form, when you're talking about a possible scenario, or the potential form, which indicates the ability to do the verb. So here, we add ba as the ending to make ikeba, which means if go or if you go. So an example might be 学校に行けば勉強ができます。学校に行けば勉強ができます。
And in this case, you're communicating a possible scenario of what you can do if you go to school.
And now the potential form, where you add ru at the end of ike to make ikeru, which is can go.
Then for example, if someone asks me if I can go to Disneyland next week, would I answer by saying ikeru, which means that I can go to Disneyland next week?
Right. Finally, we'll have a look at the volitional verb. So when you want to say, let's do something, you change the vowel sound from u to o, so it becomes iko, and then you simply add u at the end.
Then iko. Let's go?
Perfect. Now we've managed to conjugate one single verb into many different forms using the simple methods. However, there's an exception to this, and these are verbs ending in the letter u. Not the sound u, but the letter u.
So something like kau, which means to buy.
Yeah, that's a good example. For most of the conjugations, it follows the same rules as we discussed, but it's only when it comes to the short negative where it uses a different pattern. So if the rules were the same and you were to conjugate the verb kau to the short negative, what would happen?
So since kau ends with the letter u, we would change that into an a, right? And then we add nai at the end. So possibly ka-a-nai.
Right. So this is the exception. You don't change it to a, but you change it to wa. So it becomes ka-wa-nai. Ka-wa-nai.
Well, I guess it's a lot easier to say.
Yeah. So just remember to do this for verbs ending in the letter u. Hopefully you managed to get a better understanding of how to conjugate Japanese verbs. I know it's a lot to absorb, so if you have any questions, please let us know in the comments below.
If you liked our video, don't forget to press that like button and to subscribe to our channel.
This is it for today, and we'll see you in the next video. Ja, mata ne!
I think it could be a little bit longer. I personally think. Oh no!